An endling is the last known individual of a species or subspecies, and the word was first used in the April 4, 1996 issue of the British weekly scientific journal Nature. Pictured here is the last known Tasmanian tiger, or Tasmanian wolf, a kind of carnivorous marsupial native to the Australian mainland and the islands Tasmania and New Guinea. This photo was taken in Hobart Zoo, Tasmania in 1933. It died of old age 3 years later, and while it's possible the Tasmanian tiger persisted in the wild for some time following the death of this individual, it is considered the endling of its species. Prior to European settlement, around 5,000 tigers remain in the wild on Tasmania. In the early 19th century, they were perceived as a threat to the livestock of farmers, and bounty hunting was introduced. The intensive hunt of the animal is generally blamed for its extinction, but other contributing factors were disease, the introduction and competition with dingoes, human encroachment into its habitat, and climate change. The animal has been used extensively as a symbol of Tasmania and is featured on the official coat of arms of the island and remains a symbol of nature conservation and threatened species. Other notable endlings were Martha, the very last passenger pigeon, declared extinct in 1914, and this last recording of the song of the Kauai o'o, a bird native to the islands of Hawaii, probably extinct in 1992. The extinction of the Kauai o'o was largely due to introduction of predators to the islands, such as rats and mongoose, that were able to reach the birds in the cavities in the trees they like to nest in. There were also diseases and the destruction of the animal's habitat. Already in the 1960s, only 34 of them remained. In the 1970s, the only known footage of the bird was filmed, and several recordings of their song were made. In 1981, a pair was found, but by this point, the birds had retreated to higher ground on the island of Kauai, the last place they ever lived, and the trees at higher altitudes lacked cavities for nests. 2 hurricanes sweeping the island 10 years apart were the final blow for the species, as they destroyed many of the old nesting trees. The last female bird was likely killed during one of these hurricanes, and the last recording of a male bird singing, possibly calling for a mate, was made in 1987. After expeditions in the late 80s failed to find any surviving birds, and another hurricane in 1992, it's quite likely the species died out in the early 1990s. But it wasn't officially declared extinct by the International Union of Conservation of Nature until the year 2000. With the death of this wonderful bird, the entire family of Hawaiian honey-eaters was completely gone. The passenger pigeon was once the most abundant bird found in North America, numbering 3 billion birds, possibly up to 5 billion. They migrated in enormous flocks, searching for food, shelter, and breeding ground. The name passenger was derived from the French word passager, which means to pass by in a fleeting manner. The pigeon was a source of food for Native Americans, but hunting greatly intensified in the 19th century. Pigeon meat was commercialized as cheap food, the birds were easy to kill even by amateur shooters, and so they were hunted on a massive scale for many decades. Several other factors, such as deforestation and destruction of its habitat, contributed to the fast decline of the pigeon. In just about a century, in 1900, the last confirmed wild bird was shot in Ohio. Martha, pictured here, was thought to be the endling, and died on September 1st, 1914, in Cincinnati Zoo in Ohio. If we look at the 4 billion year history of life on Earth, extinction is obviously inevitable. It's estimated that 99% of every species that has ever existed has died out. It's a natural consequence of evolution. New varieties of organisms arise and thrive when they are able to find and exploit an ecological niche. They respond and adapt to the distribution of resources and competitors. Some species have very broad niches, others very narrow, but either way, extinction happens when they are no longer able to survive in changing conditions or against superior competition. Typically, species disappear about 10 million years after first arising, though some species, called living fossils, have survived without changing much for hundreds of millions of years. Change happens slowly. Continents move over the course of many millions of years, creating mountains when there were none before, making oceans appear or disappear, and erosion from wind and rain do the rest. The climate has gotten hotter and colder over equally long periods of time. The ever-changing face of the Earth causes species to disappear and new species to fill in the empty niches. The background extinction rate, also known as the normal extinction rate, refers to the standard rate of extinction in Earth's history. On rare occasions, however, extreme events have caused changes that are too drastic for a majority of species to adapt to quickly. Probably the most famous example of a mass extinction is the meteor impact that wiped out the last remaining species of dinosaurs about 65 million years ago. Huge and long-lasting volcanic eruptions have caused mass extinctions as well, causing a big shift in the Earth's climate over the course of hundreds of thousands of years. Enough to cause one of the biggest extinction events in the history of our planet about 445 million years ago, when about 85% of all species died out. Most species that went extinct are never scientifically documented. One reason is fossil records will always be incomplete. We can gather a ton of information from fossils, but not nearly every species that has ever existed has left behind petrified remains. The further back in time you try to find fossils, the less there are. Early life was soft, spongy, jellyfish-like, and the very first life forms were microscopic bacteria. There are some fossils, but they're incredibly rare and difficult to find, since fossilized microorganisms are not obvious at first glance. You may even have found a rock on the beach that contained microfossils. Shelled creatures, bugs with hardened exoskeletons, and beings with bones are often found preserved beautifully in rock, but it remains complicated to determine species unless you find a big amount of them. Dinosaurs are some of the most famous extinct creatures because they were once abundant and left behind many remains. Between 420 and 250 million years ago, trilobites were some of the most successful of the early animals, ruling the Earth for almost 270 million years, with over 22,000 species having been described, purely from fossils. Every species of trilobite died out completely many millions of years ago. At some point, every species had but one remaining member left, the endling, and we'll never know most of them. The last dinosaur, the last trilobite, the last of the types of primitive plants that were the first to conquer the land and cover it in green, the last of the first bacteria floating in the ancient oceans, the last of the primitive cells of which every living creature past and present is a descendant, the hypothesized last universal common ancestor, or LUCA. It probably existed at the latest 3.6 billion years ago and as early as 4.3 billion years ago. At some point, eons ago, this little single-celled creature had an endling, in a time in Earth's history that is hard to imagine, with toxic air, a much harsher sun, barren, grey landmass, and nothing but the sound of the wind. Endlings are but one endpoint. Life on Earth has always bounced back and thrived again, and time forgot these numerous dead species, and only deep layers of rock remember a handful of them. Still, the stories of the Tasmanian tiger, the Kauai-o'o, and the passenger pigeon are different. Sure, you can say some of these recently extinct animals were already few in number and lived in very specific niches, and so were already vulnerable, and it was only a matter of time before they went. Particularly specialized small island species like the Kauai-o'o need only a little push and a bit of bad luck to die out, unfortunately. Who knows how many millions of these small, hyper-specialized species have come and gone in the last 4 billion years. It would seem occupying a broader niche and being adaptable is the way to go for a species to remain successful for longer. Now, with us humans thrown in the mix, it all becomes a lot more complicated, as we've seen. The Tasmanian tiger may have survived until today if we hadn't been so careless. The Kauai-o'o may still be singing if we had done something to save it sooner. Never before has there been a creature on this planet capable of preventing extinction, but you probably hear me coming. As we've seen, we're also often the cause of extinction, especially in the modern age. Climate change, destruction of habitat, pollution, human activity is currently causing what scientists have dubbed the Holocene extinction. According to the 2019 Global Assessment Report on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services by the IPBES, the biomass of wild animals has fallen by 82%. Natural ecosystems have lost about half their area, and 1 million species are at risk of extinction, all largely as a result of human actions. 25% of plant and animal species are threatened with extinction. Some scientists estimate up to half of the currently existing plant and animal species may become extinct by 2100. I'm not here to try and convince the naysayers and non-believers of the truth. The fact is that this is happening, and sticking one's head in the sand isn't going to change anything. On the bright side, since we've become aware of our impact on the world, many conservation programs have seen the light of day. Probably still the most famous example of a conservation effort to save a species is that of the giant panda. Still, many other less cuddly creatures benefit from these programs. However, without significant changes in global policies and individual behaviors, the Holocene extinction threatens to irreversibly alter the planet's ecosystems, and we do very much need these for our own survival. The deforestation of the Amazon rainforest is by right considered one of the most devastating human activities. The forest is often nicknamed the lungs of the earth, because the amount of trees and plants provide Earth's atmosphere with a lot of oxygen. And probably just as important, but often overlooked, the amount of phytoplankton in the ocean accounts for half of the oxygen production on our planet, despite amounting to only 1% of the global plant biomass. It's currently not entirely clear how human activity affects the phytoplankton in our oceans, but it is without a doubt highly important for oxygen production. We kinda need oxygen to breathe, you know? The extinction of the passenger pigeon teaches us an uncomfortable lesson. Endlings of eons ago we can forget, but the wiping out of a few billion animals over the course of little over a century is something we don't want to think about too much. Our current activities causing numerous and unknown species to die out is something we don't want to think about at all, on top of all the other things that are going on. Yeah, I also wish I didn't have to live in interesting times, but it is what it is, and as Gandalf the Grey once said,
"So do all who live to see such times, but that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us."
Will there one day be a human endling? That's another unsettling thought, and there are no guarantees for the future. Surely, technology has made that our species ending one day seems extremely unlikely, at least for the time being. There's currently 8 billion of us, and thanks to modern medicine, many ailments and illnesses that were once pretty much a death sentence are just not major problems anymore. On the other hand, we have become very capable of wiping ourselves out. There's also factors that are out of our control. A big meteor crashing into Earth may just give us the same fate as the dinosaurs. A viral pandemic may be our undoing if everything that can go wrong does go wrong. These scenarios seem rather unlikely, at least for now, but they're not completely impossible either, even if we are getting rather capable of preventing some of them. If we keep in mind the 10 million years that most species seem to last, we still have quite a lot of time left, though that is an average, so many species have died out much sooner than that as well. In fact, fossil and genetic research into human ancestry has shown that about 900,000 years ago, it seems there were only about 1,000 individuals left of one single human ancestor species in Africa. And we and other human species that came after, like the Neanderthals for instance, are all descended from them. Our family was once critically endangered, so we got very lucky to even exist at all. We can't say if those 1,000 human ancestors had any idea of how close they were to extinction. They were likely quite intelligent, and while they may have understood the concept of death, they probably weren't smart enough to understand a broader concept like extinction. It is known that more intelligent animals, mainly mammals, can be aware of their imminent demise. Elephants, for instance, will separate from their group to go die alone, once their end is near. Anybody that's worked in healthcare will tell you stories of how some people just know they're going to pass away soon. Humans and elephants alike mourn their dead, so the concept of death is not unique to us, and our ancestors and sibling species most likely knew about it as well. The larger concept of extinction is probably uniquely human, born from our immense curiosity and drive to understand the world and the universe and everything we find in it. The idea that species and the human race could go extinct was not considered a very serious topic to think about before the 18th and 19th centuries. Thinkers and scientists mostly believed that the universe provided everything necessary for humans and living beings in general to have plenty. This idea changed during the Age of Enlightenment in the 17th and 18th centuries, and especially the deeper study of fossils proved that there were numerous species that didn't exist anymore. The development of the theory of evolution was another key idea in further research into extinction, and ultimately the prospect of human extinction. As far as we know, we're the only species to exist that can not only think about its own demise, but cause it as well. The good news, I suppose, is that means we're also capable of preventing ourselves from dying out. Many a science fiction story sees us colonizing space. Some see us upload our collective consciousness and knowledge into super powerful computers, and ensuring humanity, or at least what makes us unique and our history and everything that we've ever accomplished, survives deep time and the many eons of starlight slowly dying in the universe, until everything goes dark, and nothing remains but evaporating black holes, and whatever machines people once built to ensure some remnant of humanity sees the end of everything. Many other stories imagine us destroying ourselves, recognizing that while we are capable of great altruism, we're just as capable of great selfishness and greed, or simply carelessness with emerging technologies such as AI, or just being careless with the finite resources our planet has available. Perhaps humanity's greatest flaw is apathy. And so we can wonder what it would be like to be the endling of the human species. Maybe sooner than we would like to believe, probably more inevitable than we would like to hope. We can wonder if this person would realize what's happening. The last Tasmanian tiger and the last passenger pigeon spent their final days in a cage in a zoo, and they simply couldn't know they were the last member of their species. The last Kauai-o'o calling for a mate couldn't have known there were no others left. The bird was just following its instinct. We can't project complex human emotions onto animals. And yet, part of us can't help but wonder what it would feel like to be in that position. You're the last human. What unimaginable calamity befell the world that now there's just you? Would you know? Would you sit alone, maybe taking shelter? Maybe looking out over the land, hoping for signs of someone, anyone else? How long has it been since you've seen another human, heard other voices, seen someone smile or cry? How much time, how many empty sunrises would you have to endure before you come to the conclusion there is no one else left, nobody's coming, and this is the end? Perhaps you'd hold on to the thought that, even if it's the end for you, other people could still be out there, somewhere. Would you deny or accept to be the last human? Would you wait for the darkness to take you, or think, screw it, if this is it, then so be it, and seek out your own end? Would you keep calling out for others until your voice is silent? The end of humanity would mean the end of all our collective history and knowledge. Much of what humanity once was is already lost to time forever. Every ancestor, every hunter-gatherer was once a whole person, a whole life of experiences and emotions, without leaving a single trace, but on rare occasions, a few bones, scraps of clothing, a pretty keepsake, or a few lines of paint on a cave wall. We're still here, so many thousands of years later, collecting what remains, keeping record in writing or digital, hoping to safeguard these pieces of knowledge for the future. But once there is no one left, all this information is lost as well. No trilobite or dinosaur or pigeon left behind more than their empty shells and bones, but humans are the only species known that has built such a vast well of knowledge about ourselves, other living beings, and the universe we find ourselves in. The human endling may very well not be aware of any of this, or all too aware, depending on how our species ends, and there's numerous possibilities. We can wonder which end would be worse, being completely alone, or knowing that, once you die, the entire species, all that history and knowledge, dies with you. Now, humanity is currently not anywhere near dying out, and the scientific consensus is that there's a relatively low risk of near-term human extinction due to natural causes. The likelihood of human extinction because of our own activities, however, is a current era of research and debate. Luckily, it's something we are capable of thinking about and trying to prevent, even if the future seems uncertain, and the distant future is impossible to predict. We may beat the odds and exist for far longer than the average 10 million years most species exist for. There's really no way to know. In that sense, it's at least a little bit reassuring to not know when or how humanity will end. Despite the state of things currently seeming kind of awful, humanity is nowhere near over, and many people continue to do their part in ensuring the future of our species. At least for the time being. And maybe for the next 10 million years. And if it's only 9 million, or maybe even 1 million, that would still be a pretty good run. If anything, things coming to an end is inevitable. We can fight it as hard as we can, and we should. It's very much in the nature of living beings to want to stay alive for as long as possible. If there ever was one certainty in the universe, it's that things end. Stars, planets, species, civilizations, they come and go, and the passing of time is the one unstoppable force everything has to concede to eventually. As scientific research would suggest, even black holes. The saying goes, life is short, but when you really think about it, it's the longest thing you will ever do. Not existing is just that, you're just not there, and while that may seem scary, you'll never know because you wouldn't exist. Being a conscious human able to contemplate existence is kind of bizarre, but it's also in many ways a beautiful cosmic coincidence. Endings are inevitable, but there's no end without a beginning, and everything that happens in between. All in all, I find that a pretty hopeful thought, and I hope you do too. Thank you for watching. I will see you soon to learn more about the universe, about the beginning, the end, and everything that happens in between, that we are a part of.